Hello, I'm Diana Ambache, and my talk is about Fanny Mendelssohn's Das Jahr, a first in musical history. In telling you about Das Jahr, I'll start by giving some background about her family and education. Next, I'll speak about her Italian journey, and then about the piano work. In July 1840, Fanny Mendelssohn wrote this: "I cannot without emotion think of those glorious groups of pines mixed with cypresses at the Villa Ludovisi. How often and with great joy did I gaze down upon them from the Villa Medici. Oh, beautiful Italy, how rich my soul has become through you. What incomparable treasure for me to take home in my heart." Fanny was not just moved, she was also changed by her journey to Italy in 1839 to 40. She grew in confidence from the experiences of her tour, new sights, fresh appreciation, and it stirred her imagination. In painting since medieval times, there was a tradition of depicting all 12 months. This composition, Das Jahr, is the first to do so in musical history, and Fanny Mendelssohn's Year is subtitled 12 Character Pieces. This work visibly expanded the scope of small-scale piano works, both in length and idea, by combining music with illustrative vignettes and poetry. Her family gave her a fine education as well as a rich cultural environment. She had a notably warm relationship with her younger brother Felix. They continually exchanged thoughts on their music. They were the closest siblings in musical history. At her birth, her mother Leah said she had Bach fugue fingers. Unusually for the time, Leah was fond of the music of Bach, and she was Fanny's first teacher. Her next instructor was Karl Zelter, director of the Singakademie in Berlin, who was also keen on Bach. He paid Fanny the great compliment of saying she played like a man. Both the siblings were musical prodigies. Goethe, a family friend, declared Fanny equally talented as Felix. And while her brother's name is more famous, it is not right to define her by her family relationships. Fanny married the Prussian court painter Wilhelm Hensel. He was not musical, but he was extremely supportive. Reportedly, before going off to paint each morning, he would put a sheet of paper on her music stand, expecting her to fill it up. They shared mutual artistic aspirations and collaborated on more than one work. The year of their marriage, 1829, returning from his tour of Scotland, Felix had an accident in London. So, unable to get back to Berlin in time, he missed their wedding. And so she wrote her own wedding music. There has been some confusion between her and her brother's music, not least because he included 6 of her songs when he published his songs as Opus 8 and Opus 9 in 1826 and 1830. Indeed, he was proud of some of her compositions. For example, he played her Easter Sonata, now properly assigned to her, while away on his Scottish journey. They grew up with similar teaching and influences, so it was natural that there was an overlap of their stylistic ideas. However, they composed out of different motives and with different purposes for their compositions. Each had their own personal manner. At that time, it was considered unseemly for women to make music in public. Nevertheless, her dedication to music led to her being a virtuoso pianist, a composer, a kind of festival director, and even a conductor. Naturally, she created a lot of fine piano music. She also wrote a string quartet that stands with the best of its time. You may have heard it at the Finding a Voice concert series last year. Some of her songs have also been heard at the concert series. She wrote lots of these, and she is considered a very fine song composer. Her bigger works include cantatas, and the largest of all is the Oratorio on Words from the Bible. The recital on the 6th of March at this year's concert series is A Woman of Genius, Songs by Pauline Viardot. It brings up another connection. Pauline and her husband Louis Viardot were on their honeymoon in Italy at the same time that Fanny was there, although they didn't meet. The festival director reference was about her part in the cultural gatherings at their grand house in Berlin. Known as Sonntagsmusiken, they hosted Sunday musicales that attracted the great and the good of European society. Contributing substantially to the cultural life in Berlin, these events included performances by some of the most notable musicians and literary people of the day. As well as performing and composing, she even wrote a plan for how music in Berlin should be organized. The conductor description came from her guiding the chorus in preparation for the concerts. Felix had every opportunity in life, and he developed into one of the most popular romantic composers. Given her musicality, it can't have been easy being his elder sister. For a woman in 19th century Europe, it was not proper to publish music or perform professionally. People have sometimes likened their composing styles. As I hear it, Felix's music is full of classical elegance, while Fanny's is more fervent. So, in this light, Fanny was more of a romantic than Felix. There is eloquence in her impassioned manner, expressiveness, drama. Now, about the journey. Why was Italy important to her? Her uncle Bartholdi lived in Rome. Fanny's husband Wilhelm was sent there for his painting work in 1825, and Felix had visited in 1830. So it was natural for her to wish to go. Indeed, in 1825, she wrote a song called Italien, which has been interpreted as her longing to go. It has become famous as the song chosen by Queen Victoria to sing with Felix on his visit to Buckingham Palace in 1842. The opportunity for the tour came in 1839 with her husband and their son Sebastian. They made a year-long excursion, travelling across the Alps in a coach, continuing through Venice and Florence to Rome and Naples. Their 6 months in Rome included visiting the Villa Medici, which housed the winners of France's most prestigious prize, the Prix de Rome. Winners at this time included the composer Charles Gounod and the painter Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, a music lover who Fanny played trios with. Playing to the pensionnaires on Sundays, She became the focal point of the artists' colony. She played them works by Beethoven, by her brother Felix, and by herself. They were unfamiliar with this music. The repertoire and her playing impressed them, and she received tremendous acknowledgement. She was deeply affected by being admired by another composer, Charles Gounod. She received respect beyond the normal admiration for her talent, and the adulation was new to her. This appreciation, living in a southern country, and all these new experiences, such as seeing the colourful Carnival in Rome, gave her new confidence and inspiration. Aged 36, in 1841, a year after returning to Berlin, she wrote the piano cycle Das Jahr, one piece for each month of her journey. In musical history, this was the first piece to represent every month of the year. It's a brilliant creation which combined music, art, and words. Wilhelm drew vignettes on her manuscript, and between each month they placed epigrams by German poets of their time, including Goethe and Schiller. This overlay of musical, poetical, and visual ideas was one of several joint projects, with wife and husband working together. The cycle is unique in its overarching concept. The tripartite combination gave it a depth and coordination greater than any previous piano series. Its sheer length is impressive, roughly 50 minutes or so. And the range of musical ideas includes dramatic dialogue, virtuoso figuration, scherzos, lyrical melodies, song-like and solemn styles. Only a composer of great versatility could produce such variety, and the composition illustrates what a tremendous pianist she was. Fanny said of her music that it was a kind of second diary or pleasant memoir. These pieces communicate the richness of her journey. Writing to an artist friend, she said, "And now I am doing another little piece of work that gives me a lot of fun. It's a series of 12 clavier pieces which will symbolize the 12 months of the year." At that time, it was not the way for women to publish their compositions. Her father and Felix were against it. Indicating her feelings, she made a touching statement describing herself as like Buridon's ass. This is a fable where the donkey can't decide between two bales of hay and so starves. Eventually, near the end of her life, as a way of showing she was a proper musician, she did decide to publish, and she began to get professional acknowledgement. For some time, the manuscript of Das Jahr was kept in the Mendelssohn Archive in the National Library of Berlin. It was finally published in 1989, and in 2000, Furore Verlag produced a facsimile edition. Showing another dimension of her creativity, each piece was written on different coloured paper, the hue reflecting the different seasons. Fanny's son, Sebastian, realised that he came from a unique lineage. This included Fanny and Felix's grandfather, the celebrated philosopher and Jewish scholar Moses Mendelssohn. Sebastian wrote a major work. He called it The Mendelssohn Family, 1729 to 1847. From this and our increased appreciation of music by women, we can see what a major contribution she made to Berlin's cultural life and enjoy her wide range of compositions. The pieces in Das Jahr keep to chronological order, with each piece illustrating some characteristic of the month. The family's conversion to Protestantism is here exemplified by her including chorales in 3 relevant months. Easter is notated by using the Lutheran chorale Christ is Risen in March. December has the Advent chorale Von Himmel hoch, From Heaven Above to Earth I Come. Finally, there is a postlude with another appropriate chorale, The Old Year is Past. Now, picking out a few more of the months, September was their month of departure in 1839. At the River suggests movement with the flow of water. Introducing the story, January is entitled A Dream, and it is a fantasia. I've mentioned the Carnival in Rome, which happened in February. She depicts the effervescent festival, ending with the 7 gongs of the clock announcing morning. April is capricious, like the changeable weather. May, a spring song. June, a melancholy serenade. There's more sadness in July, which include tremolos of distant thunder. October reflects the autumnal hunting season. The mesto, heavy mood of November corresponds with winter. The month she returned home was August in 1840, and this music expresses restored spirits. Several of Wilhelm's vignettes suggest that the story is being told from a woman's point of view. For example, on January's manuscript, he drew a woman with a psaltery, the instrument being symbolic of Fanny's musical talent. The epigrams often have similar reference and relevance. The March epigram is taken from Goethe's Faust, when he hears the bells announcing the first ceremony of Easter. Appropriate for December, she uses the hymn text relating to the Nativity, thus demonstrating her knowledge of Bach, who had used the first stanza in his Magnificat and his Easter oratorio. Quite a few Romantic composers had the touching idea of giving their compositions as celebration gifts to loved ones, and Fanny gave Das Jahr to Wilhelm as a Christmas present. The cycle could be compared to Schumann's Carnival, but hers is on a much larger canvas. Felix's biggest work was the Variations Sérieuses, also from 1841. Felix's biggest piano work. Now, moving on to Clara Schumann, she wrote groups of pieces, but nothing on this scale. This cycle by Fanny has been likened to Liszt's Année de Pèlerinage, about his Italian journey, and composed some 3 years before Fanny's. Here's a contemporary account of the impression she made on people. In February 1842, the English composer William Sterndale Bennett wrote to a friend, "I went to a small party at Mendelssohn's, where I met all his family and some other people. He played 3 pieces and then insisted on my playing. I never was so alarmed before, not at him, for we have played too often together, but at his sister, Mrs. Hensel. I never was frightened to play to anyone before, and to think that this terrible person should be a lady. However, she would frighten many people with her cleverness." Her abilities only lasted another 5 years, as Fanny died in 1847. The day before this happened, she composed a song on words by Eichendorff. The words she set were prophetic, as the poem ends. Our fantasies as well as our songs rise up until they reach heaven. Felix was distraught from the loss of his favourite sister. His last acknowledgement of their relationship was to write an impassioned string quartet in F minor. Described as a conflagration of musical angst, it has been dubbed her requiem. To end, there have been at least 4 CD versions of Das Jahr. And of course, performances can be found on Spotify and YouTube. I hope you will take the opportunity to hear Ellen Janssen's version at 7 p.m. on this Sunday, March the 7th. Thank you for listening.
RTE supporting the arts.
Supporting artists.
Supporting us.
Hello and welcome to our live Q&A with Diana Ambache, and I would like to thank Diana very sincerely for a wonderful and fascinating talk. She's an author, a broadcaster, a pianist, a music publisher, and a leading authority on everything to do with women composers. But I know that she's particularly interested in Fanny Mendelssohn and has written a book, The Soul of the Journey, that covers a lot of the details of Fanny Mendelssohn's expedition to Italy, which she touched on this evening in this fascinating talk. Diana has also been shortlisted for the European Women of Achievement Award, and that was in 2002. So I hope you'll join me by sort of thanking Diana for a wonderful talk. And I know that some people have been putting in some questions, and I'll get to those in a moment. But if Diana is there, I'd love to ask her. I just was really fascinated by the talk. It was just so interesting. And I was wondering, when you were talking about the impact that the trip to Italy had on Fanny, whether she had travelled abroad before, or had she travelled much before this trip to Italy?
The family had occasionally gone away together. So, for example, I think they made a trip to Switzerland, and they didn't do, because I mentioned earlier, she travelled across the Alps in a coach. There weren't the railways and all of that we have now. So journeying was much more difficult. And even when Felix was working in Leipzig, he would sometimes come back to Berlin. There was a possibility he might have worked there at one point, but they couldn't swan around like we do. You know, she was basically a German who knew about Germany.
Yes, absolutely. And did she learn any Italian, or did she speak any Italian?
Well, as I said, she was incredibly clever. The family was incredibly cultured, and I think she spoke at least French. She would have known musical Italian, and then I think she even spoke some English. I'm just going to put some light on. There we go. That's better.
Wonderful. Now, one question that has come in from somebody on Twitter, and they were just interested in the whole Bach connection, because of course that's something that was a connection with Fanny's music and also Felix. And I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on that. They just said that they were surprised that there was that Bach connection with Das Jahr.
Well, many people will know about Felix, what we call resurrecting the Matthew Passion, which was the year that she got married, 1827. And she would have joined Felix, because they worked together so much. She would have joined in helping him with putting on the performance in Berlin. And I talked about the fact that her mother played the preludes and fugues, and her teacher was also keen on Bach. And, you know, the way for musicians often is that they get forgotten when they die. So it was quite unusual that they knew about Bach. And this reference to her having fugue fingers, she must have had very equal fingers. I don't, so I don't have good fugue fingers. I try to have a good fugue brain, but not fingers. And she wrote quite a lot of fugues herself. And you can just sometimes see in her music that there's a kind of background of that understanding.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fascinating. Yeah, and it was a passion that they both shared, the interest in Bach, and
absolutely.
And I forgive me because I don't know off the top of my head, but are there instances where they both used the same chorales, or is that something that
they sometimes wrote similar bits of music, and it's quite hard to trace who began what. So, for example, Fanny wrote a piano quartet when she was age 17. 17, you know, that's pretty young. And I think Felix had written some piano quartets around that time, and I can't tell you who was first. But this is all part of their sort of conversation, I think, went like this the whole time.
Well, that actually ties into, I'm seeing a question coming up here. What place did jealousy play in their relationship? Or was there, you mentioned sibling rivalry, but
yes.
Can you talk about this?
Well, here we are. We're looking on from much later period with all our own attitudes. I mean, think about working with your family or competing with your family, or luckily for me, my brothers weren't interested in music, so I didn't have competition in that domain, but I was the youngest, and so I was always trying to catch up. Well, Fanny was the oldest, and I mean, Felix certainly caught up, and because of this thing about what men could do and what women could do, you know, he had every chance. He had every public opportunity. He had position. He could compose and hear his music come back to him, as it were, and learn from that experience. Well, she did. She composed for the Sunday musicales, and so she heard her music, but it wasn't out in the public world in the way that he was. I can only guess that she would have felt jealous, but she didn't say, oh, it's unfair or anything like that.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. And then that brings me on to just a question about Wilhelm, her husband, and because he seems to have been quite supportive. Is that, and was that unusual?
Yes, not all family people were supportive, as I illustrated with her family.
You mentioned sort of he put a piece of music on, or he put a score on the stand, and yes, wanted her to sort of.
Well, when I said he wasn't musical, there was a family occasion where Felix and another friend had written something that was a special silver anniversary event for their parents. And Wilhelm was given a very simple part with just one note, but he found that very, very difficult to do. So he had no skill, but because he and Fanny were both creative and artistic, they were both supportive to each other. It was mutual.
Very good. So another question is Fanny Mendelssohn's reputation in the ascendant internationally today in terms of concerts and recordings and leading international musicians and orchestras? Do you feel that her star is increasingly on the rise, so to speak?
Yes, it is. I mean, it's a feature of our time that women are coming back into the canon, that there isn't the same I'm not sure about that we've had in the past. I mean, when I began performing music by women 35 years ago, people kind of thought, what's this? And now we've moved on from that, and there is a genuine interest. And the fact that the music is published, we have access in a way today that we never had before. Between the internet, between publishing, between YouTube and all of those things, CDs, we can hear her music, we can play her music, we can read about, a lot of people. An incredible number of American academics actually have written papers about her, and that's great. So if I want to find out something, I just look it up online, find out who's written, find out her email address, and write to them. Can you help me with? But I think these days with the internet, we have such access.
No, it's brilliant, and it's great to see more music by women composers becoming available. And as you say, as resources are easier to get hold of, then it kind of creates its own snowball effect, because it makes it easier for performers as well to access the performing materials and so on. That's great. Another question is coming in here. Did Fanny ever perform Das Jahr herself in public?
I don't know about the programs at their Berlin house. I mean, it's highly likely that she did, even if she didn't perform it as one sequence. The fact that she gave it to her husband as a Christmas present, it's more than likely she would have played some of it. And there are a couple of pieces that she, like September, when she started publishing just before she died, she included that in a series of, I think they were called 4 Lieder, Opus 2 or something like that, and September got into that. So although it was a complete story in itself, I don't think she had any problem with taking individual pieces out. I guess she played it. I guess.
Yeah. And I'm really fascinated by the I suppose what you call the tripartite kind of nature of the piece, because it was something that I didn't realize, when I was originally programming it for this year, and I was just trying to tie in with the whole "it's about time" kind of theme, and I thought, oh, this will be ideal. But as I did some research on it myself, I came across this, and of course your talk touched on it as well. Just the epigrams and the illustrations and the different coloured pages. It's really fascinating, and so that's sort of more of a comment rather than a question, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. But I think it reflects it, as well as the fact that Wilhelm was artistic, but that the whole Mendelssohn family and these cultural gatherings that they had, which included all what I call the great and the good of Europe, and that wasn't just musicians. I mean, they were, people might use the word like cultural salons. And that meant that people like Goethe, and who was a family friend, and other poets who they knew would have come, and royalty and politicians. And it was obviously the most extraordinary meeting of people and cultural ideas.
It would have been lovely to be a fly on the wall in some of those.
It would. Yeah. That's absolutely right. But there you are. You see, you're doing your version of it today.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have groups of people here, but I suppose we do virtually. We have people kind of tuning in from all over and listening to this talk, this fascinating talk, and the Q&A. So as somebody is saying a comment, she seems like a rather daunting character. If you met her today, what would the experience be like, do you think? Would she be quite severe, or did she have a sense of fun?
Well, that quote that I read from William Stondale Bennett, he obviously did find her rather daunting. And I don't know whether that was because he hadn't expected women to be forthright in that way. And I think Clara Schumann and Fanny Mendelssohn, when they met, I think they got on and they respected each other. But I have a feeling Clara said something at one point, "Don't worry about her brusque manner. She's lovely." So maybe she was very forthright. But then I can be a bit forthright, so I quite like that.
She sounds like she kind of didn't suffer fools gladly. That she was,
possibly. And because of this very intelligent family she was in, and the environment of all these creative people, I mean, yes.
Yeah. Another thing that's coming in here now, I'm just seeing this told from a woman's point of view, and you said that when Wilhelm was picking when he was doing the illustrations, that a lot of them feature women, and that the quotes, and then it ties in, I suppose, with the fact that it was this monumental artwork that was created by a woman, from a woman's point of view, and that's another really fascinating aspect, I think.
I think it's part of her, what I call dedication to music, because she went on composing for her Berlin events. And I think I find it hard to put words into her mouth, but the fact that she went on composing, and when she was acknowledged, there was another person as well as Charles Gounod who particularly encouraged her. There was a diplomat who was a very good pianist called von Keudel, who said to her towards the end of her life, "You really should publish." And I think that was what got her to do it. And so just in the last year of her life, she decided to be public. And I mean, we talk from our vantage point of the 21st century, where we're still trying very hard to be equal, and we partly succeed, but not entirely, do we? For her to decide on that kind of independence in the 19th century, in a conventional society, that shows quite a strength of character, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a question here from Ellen Jansen, actually. Ellen is going to be performing.
Hello.
Hello, Ellen. So this question is, do you see her interpretation of the month more in terms of a representation of different times of the year, or is it her personal and emotional journey in that particular year that she was in Italy?
It's a very subtle question. I think that it's... I just preface what I say with, when she decided to publish and keep to the calendar January through to December, that very slightly removes it from the journey as a sequence, although what I think she was describing was her experience in those months in the sequence. Okay. So I'm slightly hedging my bets by saying both.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yes. And thank you.
What does Ellen think? Does Ellen want to tell us what her...
Ellen, can you type in your comment there? I don't want to put words in Ellen's mouth, but no, that's really interesting, because, as you say, it does go through from January through to December, and then you have that sort of epilogue, but that didn't follow exactly the time that she was in Italy, in terms of the months she was there. So yeah, very interesting. Okay.
Just a little add on to that. the sequence was a year's journey, of which 6 months, in other words, half of it, was in Rome. So she wasn't traveling every month. Although Rome had different experiences. So, for example, the Carnival in February is not the same as another 6 months apart. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And the Carnival seems to have made a big impact on her. Is that?
Yes. It was a truly mad event. I mean, I think Goethe wrote about it because he'd been earlier, and he said something like, anything is permitted except killing people.
Oh my God. Okay. Wow. A comment is coming in here. Happily, the Irish Embassy is housed in the Mendelssohn residence in Berlin, which I didn't know. So thank you, Patrick Plunkett, for pointing that out.
Very
yes.
Good.
And then another question: what has inspired you, Diana, to write about Fanny Mendelssohn?
Right. Well, I mentioned I've been at this, what I sometimes call digging up women, because it's taken quite a lot of research. And when I began, I stumbled upon a piano concerto by Germaine Taillefer. And I thought, why haven't I heard about this? This is weird. And it set me thinking. And then I thought, okay, so I'll go on looking. And quite early in the sequence, I made a CD for the BBC Music magazine that went out as a cover CD. And we did Fanny Mendelssohn Piano Trio, which is a fantastic piece. And I thought, wow, blimey, I mean, fancy that. And I never knew about that. And it was a real challenge, actually, to learn the piano part. I spent hours practicing it because her piano playing was so brilliant. And it was a sort of tumult of notes from the piano, and the violin and the cello would sort of sing on top of it. So I thought, gosh, she knew what she was up to. And it was a whole education for me. And then I began to learn more about what she had done. And I was very interested in the relationship between Fanny and Felix, this incredibly close connection. And everybody knows about Felix and the Scottish journey because of the Scottish Symphony and the Hebrides Overture, but not everybody knew about Fanny and the Italian journey. So I thought, well, Felix was also a very fine artist, and he made sketches on his journey. So there's the music and the sketches. And then there was Fanny, married to an artist, and her vignettes. So I thought, all right, this has to turn into a book. And then the letters between them and all of that kind of thing. So you won't be surprised to hear that COVID has affected the whole sequence. It was hoping to come out last year. No such luck. Now it's been edited. We've got most of the illustrations. I'm still waiting for some from the Bodleian. And if the virus allows, it will be launched at the Tobermory Literary Festival at the end of October. So don't hold your breath.
No, but we look forward to that. We look forward to being able to share it with everyone. And yeah, that's tremendously exciting. It's a shame that it hasn't, that COVID has disrupted things. But
well,
yeah.
We'll get there in the end. Everybody, we will all get there in the end, won't we?
Absolutely. And just another question here now. Do you think there are still pieces by Fanny out there which have been attributed to Felix, or do you think we have them all now?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't hear.
Do you think there are still pieces by Fanny which have been misattributed to Felix, or do you think we have all the pieces by her now?
Aha, very good. She made a wonderful comment about that, actually. Somebody wrote to her saying, did you write On Wings of a Song? And I think she wrote to Felix saying something like, well, apart from the fact that they can't sort the wheat from the chaff, she was putting herself down, what else of mine is floating around? And I don't think now that there's much of hers that we don't know about. And the publisher, and I've got it here, who published the facsimile of Das Jahr, has published, that's Furore Verlag, has published a lot of her music. And because of all the scholarship that I referred to earlier, most of the stuff from the Mendelssohn archive in the Berlin Library, I think, has now come into the public domain. So exciting as that would be, gosh, wouldn't that be news? Then, you know, I years ago, I had, you know, I'm obsessed by Mozart and his piano concertos. I said to somebody, well, wouldn't that be amazing if I found one more of his piano concertos? And somebody said to me, no, you want to find a whole series. Well, it doesn't happen, but there we are.
You never know. You never know. It might turn up somewhere. So somebody else is asking, Peter is asking, what kind of relationship did Fanny have with Clara Schumann, who is, of course, another piano virtuoso and composer?
That's right.
But Clara Schumann had a public career.
That's right. And Clara Schumann, of course, was one of the greatest piano virtuosos of the 19th century. And she was away on tour playing. I mean, she basically was the breadwinner because, of course, Robert had a very difficult time and his career went up and down and he went into an asylum and, you know, they had 7 children and she looked after the children. She looked after Robert. She had a performing career. She was a composer. So how often they met, I can't even give you a number of times. I know they did. I know that Clara was writing a piano trio at the same time that Fanny was, in other words, 1846. And because Clara was predominantly a performing musician, which Fanny wasn't, they were on slightly different trajectories. I think that they would have sympathized of the problems of being a composer. Clara probably got more appreciation as a performer than Fanny would have, because Fanny was not a public, in the sense of professional concerts performer. I don't know. It's a guess. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Did they dedicated the piano trios to one another? Was there some?
Clara was going to do that.
Yeah,
to Fanny. Yeah, that's right.
But then he died, and
yes.
yeah. Anyway, I think we're just getting lots of feedback from people saying that it was a wonderful talk, and thank you so much. So,
thank you,
Diana, I would like to say thank you so much. It's been really fascinating, and I think for all of us, it's been a tremendous introduction to the piece das Jahr that we're going to hear Sunday night, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Exactly. So, Roisin, thank you very much for what you're doing. You see, you've opened my eyes. I didn't know what went on in Ireland, and then you told me. And I hope people will listen on Sunday, because it's an extraordinary piece of music. You know, that's so. Long live the women. Good luck to Ellen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye-bye now. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope that you will join us on Sunday evening for a wonderful concert with the first full Irish performance of Fanny Mendelssohn's Das Jahr, performed by Ellen Jansen. So please do join us for that concert, and thank you all for tuning in this evening, and also for your lovely questions and comments, and we'll see you again hopefully over the weekend. Thank you.